Before I share my story, let me ask you, what would you do if the person you trusted most brought a stranger into your family's most sacred moments, and the truth came to you in a plain hotel folder? I thought I was going on a family vacation, a chance to reconnect and heal. But the day my husband brought his assistant along, I realized I'd spent years ignoring the cracks in our marriage. This isn't just a story about infidelity or secrets. It's about the moment you finally see what's been in front of you all along, and the courage it takes to open the folder, face the truth, and decide what kind of life you want next. So settle in, and if you've ever wondered what you'd do in my shoes, hit that subscribe button. Because what happened next changed not just my marriage, but the way I see myself forever. The day my husband brought his assistant on our family vacation, I realized I'd spent years ignoring the signs that something was broken. It started with a suitcase. Not mine, not my daughter's, not even my husband's usual battered leather one. This was new, sleek, expensive, with a bright red tag that stood out against the faded luggage on the hotel cart. I noticed it as soon as we checked in, but I told myself it was nothing. Maybe the hotel had mixed up the bags. Maybe it belonged to another guest. But then I saw her, Emily, my husband's assistant. She was standing in the lobby, her hair perfectly styled, her smile just a little too bright. She waved at us, her eyes lingering on my husband a moment too long. "Surprise," he said, his voice too cheerful. "I thought it would be fun to have Emily join us. She's never been to the coast." I forced a smile, my heart pounding. Of course, the more the merrier. Our daughter, Lily, didn't seem to notice. She was too busy running to the window, pressing her nose against the glass, marveling at the view of the ocean. I watched her, wishing I could share her innocence, her excitement, her belief that family vacations were still about family. The hotel was beautiful, whitewashed walls, wide verandas, the scent of salt and jasmine in the air. Our suite had 2 bedrooms, a living room, and a balcony that looked out over the waves. I tried to focus on the details, to let the beauty of the place wash away my unease. But Emily was everywhere. She joined us for breakfast, for walks on the beach, for late-night games of cards. She laughed at all my husband's jokes, touched his arm when she thought I wasn't looking, offered to help with everything from sunscreen to dinner reservations. My husband, Mark, seemed happier than he'd been in months. He smiled more, laughed more, talked more. He took Emily's side in every conversation, praised her ideas, asked her opinion on everything from restaurants to sightseeing. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, that I was being paranoid, jealous, insecure, that Mark was just being friendly, that Emily was just doing her job. But the doubt lingered, growing with every passing day. On the 3rd night, as we were getting ready for dinner, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find the hotel receptionist, a young woman with kind eyes and a nervous smile. "Mrs. Carter," she asked, holding out a folder. "This was left for you at the front desk." I took the folder, my hands shaking. "Thank you." She hesitated, her eyes flickering to Mark, then back to me. "If you need anything, please let us know." I closed the door, my heart pounding. I looked at the folder, plain, unmarked, heavy with secrets. I realized then that I'd spent years ignoring the signs that something was broken. And I knew, in that moment, that the truth was about to come crashing in. I sat on the edge of the bed, the folder heavy in my lap, my hands trembling. Mark was in the bathroom, humming as he shaved, the sound of running water muffling my thoughts. Lily was sprawled on the balcony, her sketchbook open, her feet swinging over the edge. Emily was nowhere to be seen, probably off exploring the hotel or texting her friends about the work trip she'd managed to turn into a seaside holiday. I stared at the folder, my mind racing. I thought about the years Mark and I had spent building a life together, late nights with colicky bobbies, early mornings with burnt toast and spilled coffee, the quiet comfort of shared routines. I thought about the vacations we'd taken before, road trips in the old minivan, camping in the rain, laughing until our sides hurt. I thought about the promises we'd made, the dreams we'd shared, the way he used to look at me like I was the only person in the world. But lately, things had changed. Mark was distant, distracted, always on his phone. He worked late, traveled more, came home smelling of cologne I didn't recognize. He said it was just stress, that the business was growing, that he was doing it all for us. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust him. But the doubt had been growing, a slow ache in my chest that wouldn't go away. I opened the folder, my breath catching in my throat. Inside were a stack of papers, hotel receipts, dinner bills, printouts of emails. There were photos, two, Mark and Emily, laughing together at a restaurant, walking on the beach, sitting side by side at a bar. Some were selfies, others taken from a distance, as if by someone watching. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages. The dates matched the times Mark had said he was working late, the business trips he'd taken, the weekends he'd spent networking. The emails were intimate, full of inside jokes, plans to meet, confessions of affection. I felt sick, the truth settling over me like a cold wave. I thought about the way Emily had looked at Mark, the way he'd smiled at her, the way they'd shared secrets and laughter while I stood on the outside, trying to hold my family together. Mark came out of the bathroom, his face freshly shaved, his eyes bright. "Ready for dinner?" he asked, his voice too cheerful. I forced a smile, slipping the folder under the bed. "Almost, just need a minute." He nodded, not noticing the tremor in my voice, the way my hands shook as I brushed my hair. At dinner, Emily joined us, her dress a little too short, her laughter a little too loud. Mark ordered wine, toasted to family, his eyes lingering on Emily a moment too long. Lily chattered about the beach, her new friends, the seashells she'd found. I tried to keep up, to smile, to laugh, to pretend everything was normal. But inside, I was unraveling. That night, after Lily was asleep, I sat on the balcony, the ocean breeze cool against my skin. I thought about the folder, about the secrets it held, about the life I thought I knew. I wondered how long it had been going on, how many lies Mark had told, how many times I looked the other way. I realized then that I couldn't ignore the truth any longer. And I promised myself that, whatever happened next, I would not let myself be erased. The next morning, I woke before dawn, the sky outside our window still dark, the only sound the distant crash of waves and the soft, steady breathing of Lily in the next room. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the folder hidden under the bed like a secret I couldn't bear to face. I thought about the photos, the emails, the receipts, evidence of a life I hadn't known my husband was living. Mark was already up, moving quietly around the suite, careful not to wake anyone. I watched him from the doorway, the way he checked his phone, the way he smiled at a message, the way he slipped out onto the balcony to make a call. I listened to his voice, low, urgent, softer than he ever spoke to me. I made coffee, the smell filling the kitchen, the warmth of the mug steadying my hands. Emily appeared, her hair tousled, her eyes bright. She smiled at me, her voice sweet as honey. "Morning, Mrs. Carter. Did you sleep well?" I nodded, forcing a smile. "Fine, thank you." She poured herself a cup of coffee, leaning against the counter, her eyes never leaving Mark as he came back inside. "Big plans today?" she asked, her tone light. Mark grinned, his eyes meeting hers. "I thought we'd check out the lighthouse, maybe take a boat tour. What do you think, Anna?" I shrugged, my voice tight. "Whatever you want." At breakfast, I watched them, Mark and Emily, laughing together, sharing stories, finishing each other's sentences. Lily was too busy with her pancakes to notice, but I saw the way Emily touched Mark's arm, the way he leaned in when she spoke, the way they seemed to exist in a world of their own. After breakfast, Mark and Emily went to the front desk to ask about tour. I stayed behind with Lily, helping her pack her beach bag, brushing the sand from her shoes, tying her hair back in a ponytail. "Are you okay, Mom?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I'm fine, sweetheart, just a little tired." She hugged me, her arms warm around my waist. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, Lily, always." Later, as we walked to the beach, I noticed Emily lagging behind, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice low and urgent. Mark waited for her, his hand on her back, his eyes full of concern. I felt a surge of anger, of jealousy, of fear. I wondered how long it had been going on, how many times I'd missed the signs, how many times I'd told myself everything was fine. That afternoon, as Lily played in the waves, I sat on the sand, the folder heavy in my bag, my heart pounding. I watched Mark and Emily walk along the shore, their heads bent together, their laughter carried away by the wind. I realized then that I couldn't ignore the truth any longer. And I promised myself that, whatever happened next, I would not let myself be erased. That evening, the hotel hosted a bonfire on the beach. Guests gathered around the flames, roasting marshmallows, singing along to a man with a guitar. Lily was in her element, running with a pack of children, her laughter ringing out over the sound of the surf. I sat on a driftwood log, the folder still hidden in my bag, my eyes fixed on the fire. Mark and Emily sat together on the other side of the flames, their heads close, their voices low. Every so often, Mark would glance my way, his smile faltering when he saw me watching. Emily never looked at me at all. I tried to focus on Lily, on the warmth of the fire, on the beauty of the night. But the doubt gnawed at me, sharp and relentless. I thought about the photos, the emails, the receipts. I thought about the way Mark had changed, the way Emily had inserted herself into our lives, the way I'd let it all happen. After the bonfire, we walked back to the hotel in silence. Lily was tired, her head drooping on my shoulder. Mark and Emily walked ahead, their voices a soft murmur in the darkness. When we reached the suite, Lily went straight to bed, her cheeks flushed, her hair tangled with salt and sand. Mark disappeared into the bathroom, Emily into her own room. I sat on the balcony, the ocean breeze cool against my skin, the folder heavy in my lap. I opened it again, reading through the emails, the receipts, the photos. I looked for a clue, a sign, a reason. I wanted to believe there was an explanation, that I was overreacting, that Mark was just being kind, that Emily was just lonely. But the truth was there in black and white. The emails were intimate, full of inside jokes, plans to meet, confessions of affection. The photos were damning Mark and Emily, laughing together at a restaurant, walking on the beach, sitting side by side at a bar. Some were selfies, others taken from a distance, as if by someone watching. I felt sick, the truth settling over me like a cold wave. I thought about the way Emily had looked at Mark, the way he'd smiled at her, the way they'd shared secrets and laughter while I stood on the outside, trying to hold my family together. I thought about confronting Mark, about demanding answers, about making a scene. But I knew Lily would hear, that Emily would deny everything, that Mark would find a way to twist the truth. I needed more. I needed proof. I needed a plan. The next morning, I woke early, slipping out of the suite while everyone else was still asleep. I went to the front desk, the folder clutched in my hand. The receptionist greeted me with a kind smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Carter. Is everything all right?" I hesitated, then slid the folder across the counter. "This was left for me. Do you know who brought it?" She glanced at the folder, her eyes widening. "Yes, ma'am. It was left by a guest who checked out yesterday. She said it was important that you needed to see it." I frowned, my heart pounding. Did she leave a name? The receptionist shook her head. "No, ma'am, but she said you'd understand." I thanked her, my mind racing. Who had left the folder? How had they known? What did they want me to do? Back in the suite, Mark was making coffee, his smile too bright. "Where'd you go so early?" he asked, his voice casual. I shrugged, forcing a smile. "Just needed some air." Emily appeared, her hair perfectly styled, her eyes bright. She poured herself a cup of coffee, her gaze never leaving Mark. I watched them, my heart pounding, my mind racing. I realized then that the truth was out there, waiting for me to find it. And I promised myself that, whatever happened next, I would not let myself be erased. The rest of the day passed in a haze. I went through the motions, breakfast with Lily, a walk on the beach, a visit to the little shops along the boardwalk, but my mind was elsewhere. Every time I looked at Mark, I saw the emails, the photos, the way he smiled at Emily when he thought I wasn't watching. Every time I heard Emily laugh, I wondered what secrets she was keeping, what promises she'd made, what lies she'd told. I tried to focus on Lily, on her joy, on the way she collected seashells and built castles in the sand. I tried to remind myself that I was here for her, that I was still her mother, that I still had a family to protect. But the doubt gnawed at me, sharp and relentless. I thought about the folder, about the woman who had left it for me, about the truth that was waiting to be uncovered. That afternoon, I sat on the balcony, the ocean breeze cool against my skin, the folder heavy in my lap. I flipped through the pages again, searching for a clue, a sign, a reason. I noticed a receipt I hadn't seen before, a dinner for two at a restaurant in the city, dated 2 weeks before the vacation. The signature at the bottom was Emily's. I stared at the receipt, my mind racing. I remembered that night Mark had said he was working late, that he had a meeting with a client, that he'd be home after Lily was asleep. I'd believed him, trusted him, never questioned his story. Now I wondered how many other nights he'd lied, how many other dinners he'd shared with Emily, how many other secrets he'd kept. I decided I needed answers. I waited until Mark and Emily went out for a walk, then called the restaurant. The hostess was polite, her voice cheerful. Yes, I remember Mr. Carter and Ms. Emily. They come in often, always request a quiet table in the back, very friendly, very close. I thanked her, my heart pounding, my hands shaking. I realized then that the truth was bigger than I'd imagined, that the betrayal ran deeper than I'd feared. That night after Lily was asleep, I sat on the balcony, the folder in my lap, the ocean roaring in my ears. Mark joined me, his face tired, his eyes wary. "Anna, is everything all right?" he asked, his voice soft. I looked at him, my heart breaking. "No, Mark, everything is not all right." He frowned, his eyes narrowing. "What's going on?" I took a deep breath, my voice steady. "I know about you and Emily. I know about the dinners, the emails, the photos. I know everything." He stared at me, shock and fear written on his face. "Anna, I held up a hand, stopping him. I don't want to hear any more lies." Mark stared at me, his mouth opening and closing, searching for words that wouldn't come. The silence between us was thick, broken only by the distant sound of waves and the soft hum of the hotel's air conditioning. I could see the panic in his eyes, the way his hands trembled as he tried to steady himself. "Anna, please," he finally whispered, his voice raw. "It's not what you think." I shook my head, my voice trembling but strong. "Don't insult me, Mark. I've seen the emails, the photos, the receipts. I know you've been lying to me. I know you've been lying to Lily." He looked away, his jaw clenched, his shoulders slumping. "I never meant for it to go this far. Emily, she was just supposed to help with work, but things got complicated. I was lonely. I felt like you didn't see me anymore." I felt a flash of anger, hot and sharp. "You felt invisible. I've spent years holding this family together, Mark. I've spent years making sure you and Lily had everything you needed, and you repay me by bringing your affair on our family vacation." He flinched, his eyes filling with tears. "I'm sorry, Anna, I really am. I never wanted to hurt you." I stood, my hands shaking. "But you did. You hurt me. You hurt Lily. You destroyed the trust we built, the life we made, the family we promised to protect." He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Don't. I need time. I need space. I need to figure out what comes next." I left him on the balcony, the folder in my hand, my heart pounding. I walked down to the beach, the sand cool beneath my feet, the moonlight shimmering on the waves. I let the tears fall, let the anger and grief wash over me, let myself feel the full weight of the betrayal. I thought about Lily, about the life I wanted for her, about the example I wanted to set. I thought about the woman I used to be, strong, confident, unafraid. I realized then that I didn't have to accept this. I didn't have to stay silent. I didn't have to let Mark and Emily write the next chapter of my story. The next morning, I woke early, the sun just beginning to rise over the ocean. I made a decision. I would not let this vacation end in silence. I would not let Mark and Emily walk away without facing the consequences of their actions. I called the hotel manager, asking to reserve a private room for a family meeting. I told Lily we needed to talk, that there were things she needed to know. I sent a message to Mark and Emily, telling them to meet me at 10 o'clock. At 10 sharp, we sat around a table in the hotel's private lounge. Lily sat beside me, her eyes wide and confused. Mark and Emily sat across from us, their faces pale, their hands folded in their laps. I took a deep breath, my voice steady. Lily, there's something you need to know. Your father has been lying to us. He's been having an affair with Emily. Lily gasped, her eyes filling with tears. Dad, is that true? Mark nodded, his voice breaking. I'm sorry, Lily. I never wanted to hurt you. Emily looked down, her face flushed with shame. I'm sorry, Lily. I made a mistake. I hugged Lily, holding her close as she cried. I looked at Mark and Emily, my voice calm but firm. You both need to leave. Lily and I will finish this vacation together, and when we get home, we'll decide what comes next. Mark and Emily left the hotel that afternoon. There was no dramatic scene, no shouting in the lobby, just a quiet, shameful exit. Mark packed his things in silence, his face drawn, his eyes never meeting mine. Emily followed behind, her shoulders hunched, her suitcase rolling softly over the carpet. I watched them go from the balcony, my heart heavy but resolute. Lily sat beside me, her face pale, her eyes red from crying. She was old enough to understand, but still young enough to be hurt by the truth. I hugged her close, whispering that none of this was her fault, that I loved her, that we would get through this together. For the first time in days, I felt a sense of peace. The truth was out. The lies were over. Now it was just me and Lily facing the world together. The next morning, the hotel manager stopped by our suite. She was kind, her eyes full of sympathy. Mrs. Carter, I just wanted to check in. If you need anything, please let us know. And I'm sorry for what you've been through. I thanked her, grateful for her kindness. She handed me a small envelope. This came for you at the front desk. I think you'll want to see it. Inside was a note from the receptionist, the same young woman who had handed me the folder. I'm sorry for the pain this caused, but I thought you deserved the truth. If you ever need a reference or just a friend, you have one here. I felt tears prick my eyes. Sometimes, the people who help us most are the ones we least expect. Word of what happened spread quickly through the hotel. Staff members offered quiet smiles, extra towels, a free dessert for Lily at dinner. Other guests gave us space, their eyes full of curiosity and sympathy. I realized then that I wasn't alone, that even in the midst of heartbreak, there were people who cared. Lily and I spent the rest of the vacation together, walking on the beach, collecting seashells, eating ice cream for breakfast, laughing at silly movies in our room. We talked about the future, about what we wanted, about the kind of life we could build together. When we returned home, I called Ruth and told her everything. She listened, her voice full of love and outrage. You did the right thing, Anna. You stood up for yourself. You protected Lily. I'm proud of you. I smiled, feeling the weight of months lift from my shoulders. Thank you, Ruth. I'm proud of me, too. I filed for divorce the next week. Mark tried to apologize, tried to explain, but I was done listening. I was done making myself small for someone who didn't see me, who didn't value me, who didn't love me the way I deserved. Emily left the company, her reputation in ruins. Mark moved into a small apartment across town, his visits with Lily awkward and infrequent. I focused on rebuilding my life, my home, my career, my sense of self. The community rallied around me. Friends brought meals, neighbors offered to help with repairs, colleagues sent flowers and cards. I realized then that I was stronger than I'd ever known, that I could survive even the deepest betrayal, that I could build a new life from the ashes of the old. The months after the divorce were some of the hardest and most transformative of my life. There were days when I woke up with a heaviness in my chest, the memory of Mark's betrayal still raw. There were nights when I lay awake, listening to the quiet of the house, wondering if I'd ever feel whole again. But there were also moments of unexpected joy. Lily's laughter as we danced in the kitchen, the warmth of Ruth's arms around me, the comfort of friends who showed up with casseroles and stories and hope. I threw myself into my work, finding new purpose in projects I once set aside. I started volunteering at Lily's school, helping with art classes and bake sales, rediscovering the simple pleasure of being needed, of making a difference. I joined a book club, made new friends, and even took a painting class at the community center. For the first time in years, I felt like I was living for myself, not just for Mark, not just for Lily, but for the woman I was becoming. Lily flourished too. She made new friends, joined the soccer team, started drawing again. Her laughter came easier, her hugs tighter. We created new rituals, movie nights with popcorn, Saturday morning pancakes, long walks in the park with our dog, Daisy. I watched her grow braver, kinder, more resilient, and I knew I was doing something right. One afternoon, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Lily turned to me, her eyes shining. "Are you happy, Mom?" she asked, her voice soft. I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I am, sweetheart, I really am." She grinned, her eyes full of hope. "Me too." I hugged her close, feeling the steady beat of her heart against mine. I knew there would still be hard days, still be moments of doubt and regret. But I also knew that we were strong, that we were brave, that we were enough, just the two of us together. I started writing again, journals, letters, stories for myself and for Lily. I wrote about forgiveness, about starting over, about the way love can survive even the deepest wounds. I wrote about the lessons I'd learned, about the hope I still carried in my heart. I realized that healing wasn't a destination, it was a journey. Some days the past still hurt. Some days I missed what I'd lost. But most days I felt grateful for what I'd found. My own strength, my daughter's love, the quiet joy of a life rebuilt on truth. I was still here, I was still standing, and I was ready for whatever came next. Sometimes, the people we trust most are the ones who break our hearts the deepest. I never imagined that a family vacation would become the moment my marriage unraveled, or that a plain hotel folder would hold the truth I'd been too afraid to face. But life has a way of teaching us that even after the deepest betrayal, we can still choose to begin again. If you've ever had to rebuild your life after someone you loved let you down, or if you've ever had to find your own strength in the middle of heartbreak, I hope you know you're not alone. I know what it's like to sit in the quiet after everyone's gone, to wonder if you did enough, if you loved enough, if you mattered enough. I know what it's like to feel the ache of old wounds and the hope of new beginnings, to want to hold on and let go at the same time. But I also know that healing is possible. That courage is a choice you make every day, sometimes in small ways, sometimes in ways that change everything. I know that you can lose everything and still find yourself again, that you can be broken and still be whole, that you can be pushed out and still come back stronger. Would you have opened the folder or kept pretending for the sake of peace? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your self-respect? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your story because sometimes sharing our pain is the first step toward healing. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and share it with someone who might need a little hope tonight. Your support means more than you know. Thank you for listening and for being part of this family. Until next time, take care of yourself, and remember, even after the deepest heartbreak, you can still choose to begin again. And if you want to see what happens when a woman finally chooses herself, or if you believe in the power of second chances, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because the next story might just be the one you need.